You certainly have laid out the path of these rate cuts quite clearly here yesterday on this press conference. 25 basis points potentially in August and maybe 50 to end this year. It seems like you've struck a pretty less hawkish tone now. How do you think that's going to be impacting the peso and the currency moving forward?
Oh, that's right. Still hawkish, but less so than before. It may put pressure on the peso, but so far it hasn't. The peso opened at 57.53 this morning. That's only 7 centavos weaker than last night. So far it hasn't really affected the peso.
Okay. It seems like right now 58 seems to be that magic number people kind of bring up about whether the BSP would intervene. How far would you go in defending the currency?
Well, yesterday we didn't intervene at all. We were happy with the movement of the peso, but if there's stress, then we might come in. Stress means large offer sizes, high volatility, and then we might intervene.
You didn't intervene yesterday, but have you been intervening recently?
We have, yeah, in small amounts, not to really affect the value of the peso, more to keep markets orderly, but not yesterday.
Okay. How are your foreign reserves? I mean, do you have enough in your coffers right now in case things get volatile throughout the year, especially if you're saying that you can actually cut rates ahead of the Fed?
We have ample reserves, so we're comfortable with the amount of reserves we have.
Well, Governor Stephen Engel here, is it a wait-and-see kind of approach right now as well on the possible intervention when we're seeing that maybe the Fed, though, will not cut until December at the earliest, according to some of the expectations? Is this a strong dollar story right now that you're battling against with the peso?
Yes, it's been a strong dollar all along, broadly strong dollar for the past several weeks. So we don't feel obliged to intervene, but we want to keep the market orderly.
Governor, also, we heard some comments from you saying that perhaps some of these maritime incidents off the Philippines in the South China Sea with China have had an impact on the peso.
Yes.
What are you seeing, the direct correlation there?
Well, any incident seems to affect the peso a bit. So far, not so sharply. But recently, none at all. The incidents have not affected the peso.
Okay. Governor, is there a concern in any way of the pass-through of a weaker peso to inflation dynamics now? Is that a concern to you in any way?
The pass-through has been very small because the movements of the peso have been small. But that's not to say that if the peso weakens sharply, the pass-through may be significant. But so far, it's been small. It's been there but small.
What do you think you need to see to warrant that cut in August, Governor Remolona? Are the inflation dynamics? Do you think inflation will still remain in target of that 2 to 4%? Also, domestic demand, can that continue to soften, or are there upside risks to both of those scenarios?
There are upside risks to both scenarios, but so far the peso, the inflation rate has been looking good. It's been trending down, and output growth has remained intact. So those are pieces of good news for us, which makes us more confident about possibly easing in the second half of this year.
You also mentioned about that triple R cut, Governor. Maybe tell us a little bit more about the thinking that you can actually start discussing this triple R cut once you do start easing.
Yes,
is this going to be something that's in tandem to the rate cuts, or is something that might have to happen subsequently or afterwards?
I think my sense is it won't be on the same meeting, but we would like to reduce the reserve requirement by quite a bit because I think it's distorting financial intermediation. But the timing is important. We don't want to do it while we're still hawkish.
Okay, you said it needs to come down substantially. Can you give us a bit more on how much more it could actually be cut?
Well, I have only one vote, but I would say we can reduce it to 5%. Right now it's 9.5%. But
wow. Okay.
That's still one of the highest in the region.
Yes, Governor, you also mentioned about the BSP saying the second half GDP growth would likely slow, due to the previous rate hikes. Are we still seeing the effects of this tightening cycle on the economy? And when do you think that actually starts to fade a bit?
Yes, we are. Our transmission mechanism has long lags, it turns out. The effect peaks at about 1 year after the rate change. So we're still seeing the effects of the October rate hike. We're still seeing it today. So that's why we feel we're still hawkish.
Well, Governor, in addition to those headwinds coming from those rate hikes, what else do you see as a pressing dampener potentially in the second half on GDP growth in the Philippines?
Well, inflation is also affecting growth. It's reducing demand, especially for food, which is also the source of a major source of inflation. So the rate hike in October is still having an effect. We're beginning to see a negative output gap. That means it's possible that we're beginning to be tighter than necessary for taming inflation. But these numbers are all imprecise, so we have to use some judgment in deciding whether to ease or not.
Well, that's the big question, obviously. If inflation is still running a little bit higher than trend, that's going to be the main deciding factor then, whether you do cut in August?
Well, inflation, of course, is the main factor, but we also look at output growth. We don't want to unnecessarily reduce output just to tame inflation. So it's a balancing act, as you know, for most central banks. That's the case.
Also, when it comes to the peso, I'm just going back to the currency here. Do you have an outlook of where dollar peso is going to end up this year, and how much weakness are you likely to tolerate before the BSP has to step in?
We don't have a number. We don't have a target for the peso. We're more or less letting the peso float. But we worry about stress, and it hasn't happened yet in the last few months.